We're about to start the final session of this forum. I'd like to just go back to, once again, thanking our sponsors, because no event like this could possibly happen without our sponsors. And there they are, very good. The North Growth Foundation and the Sitka Foundation, who have been our stalwart supporters throughout the launch of Renewable Cities. Alterra Power Corporation, the City of Vancouver, who contributed in sponsorship, but also, I would say, even more importantly in terms of political and personal engagement, and shortly the Deputy Mayor, Andrea Reimer, will be with us. The Pacific Institutes for Climate Solutions, you'll hear from the Executive Director of PICS in just a moment. Vancity, the credit union, Vancouver's credit union, the Consulate General of the United States in Vancouver, and RBC. So actually, could we have a round of applause for our sponsors? Shauna's going to conclude this, so I know there are more thank yous to issue, and I'm going to count on Shauna to do that. So I've just done a little eye check with Shauna. So this is going to be, we've tried to maintain an atmosphere of dialogue throughout. Some moments like this morning, which was a call to action, was just meaning to inspire us and impart us. I think everyone, I trust that you enjoyed, I certainly did, the opportunity to have a good 2.5 hours this morning in a dialogue format, working through complex and different problems. This is a challenge for us right now, is to try and bring it to a close. There's no one conclusion to an event that's so rich and so complex. I was in a dialogue called Pathways to Paris. Well, we've been through 1,000 pathways through renewable cities and onward from renewable cities. But I want to take this time to draw different people's reactions on what you've heard and what you're taking back home. That's the theme for this final plenary. So to begin, I've asked two people. You have not heard them speak before. Margery Moore, who is the director of Bloomberg BNA, to give some reflections on some of the big ideas and currents that she's heard in the workshops and panels that she's been in, and the issues that she'll be taking back to her company and to her clients. And then after Margery, I'll ask Tom Pedersen, who's the executive director of PICS, to do the same thing. That's to enrich the discussion. And then I'll turn over to you in the audience, and I'll ask different groups of people, but really I want all of you to think about what's a takeaway that you've learned here, that you've heard here, that you want to reflect on, that you want to tell people back home. So I'll do that after Margery Moore has spoken, and then we're going to have a conversation up here on the dais with two people who've been centrally involved in making Vancouver an international city, and I'll introduce them when we get to that moment. And finally, we'll conclude with Shauna. So that's the hour, and I'd like to ask Margery to begin.
Thank you, and thank you for asking me what my takeaways are. I've got a few notes here that I compiled over lunch, because it's been a pretty amazing conference. And thank you to Renewable Cities and all the sponsors and everyone. I have to say this has been one of the most uplifting conferences I've been to for quite some time. I've been entrenched in industry and association and engineering, EHS sustainability conferences for a while. All of you need to get out there, go to those conferences, because there's been a bit of a flat line lately. So my first overarching takeaway is, personally to myself and my colleagues, is this message that we are ready. We're definitely ready for this renewable energy revolution. The tipping point is here, check. But, I also heard clearly from the sessions I was in that there's several preconditions here, or conditions for success, and we're missing one of them. First, technically, innovation-wise, we kind of got it covered, we're kicking it. Economically, the same. We heard in the plenary this morning that the economy is awash in funds to provide that money for the infrastructure and change that's going to be needed. But where work needs to be done is on the policy side, the regulatory framework side. Something needs to be put in place all across the globe to knit these two pieces together and accelerate the momentum that we see happening right here. And just as a segue on the business side, because business is also critical to this, and something I heard in one of the sessions this morning that I thought was an amazing idea when we were asked about what local governments and cities can do in the Pathways to Paris. And I heard this from the Vancouver Economic Commission, who are launching their green business platform shortly here in British Columbia, in Vancouver. They had a thought to launch a campaign to ask businesses in Vancouver to commit to the 2-degree goal that aligns with what local governments and jurisdictions are doing around the world. I thought that was great, and actually a good catalyst for ideas for others. Other takeaways, more sobering on this policy track, a chorus of voices through the plenaries and the sessions from Canadian, specifically local and city level folks expressing concern at the lack of provincial and national to local collaboration on this, just a frustration. And contrast that with Germany, where my big takeaway was that what happened there might happen elsewhere, that in lieu of or as an alternative to the regulatory policymaking we might be used to here, that if all else fails, implementing policies without business input at all might be the way we need to go, so business better get involved, and now. So that was a very interesting takeaway. And finally, in closing, I just can't resist asking people to consider that this conference has been perhaps one of the most important sources of renewable energy, and that is the charge we get from each other, from our networking, from our business card exchange, and I hope we all keep that up and you all go out there and spread the word. This has been a fantastic conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margery. Tom.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to offer a few thoughts. Margery was very brief, and I'm perhaps be slightly longer, but I hope not too long.
You've got the time.
First of all, I thought the stage was really well set on Wednesday evening at the Pechakucha event, which I had not ever participated in before or seen before, and it was really remarkable. The energy and the buzz in the room set a standard, I think, that has been emulated and followed through on the last 2 days. And so congratulations for organizing that. I wanted to mention a few quotations that I picked up over the last 2 days that have been offered by people up here on the stage primarily. And Marion Smith set the stage, I think, very well yesterday morning when she said that, and quote, action on renewables is not just an environmental strategy, it's an economic strategy. And I think we've heard that time and time again. Margery just touched on it, coming from the business side. Harry Lehman followed up on that shortly thereafter and said that Energiewende in Germany has created 380,000 jobs. And I note that in the United States solar industry, last year, 180,000 people were directly employed in the solar PV industry in the United States. Wow. I mean, we are there. Mm-hmm. We are there. There are challenges there, of course. One of the big ones being grid integration. That's something that needs a lot of work there, and my institute happens to be working on that, and it's something that we need to follow through on. Mark Jacobson showed us some of his model results that said, you know, the United States can do this. We can do everything we need in the United States in terms of energy production through renewables, and he's got a model result which will be coming out as soon as the peer review process is finished in about 3 months. That's something to watch for. Gregor Robertson, when he was here on stage, said he brought a different dimension. He reinforced the notion that this is an economic opportunity, but he also said it's a moral obligation. And I think that we dare not forget that. It was wonderful to have Brian Hansen here from Copenhagen. I want to turn to the exemplars now of cities around the world that are really doing things, in addition to Vancouver, of course. Brian offered us some statistics, which I thought are fascinating. 98% of heat consumption in Copenhagen is supplied by district heating. Now, they've been at it for 100 years. We're just starting to scratch the surface here in Canada and elsewhere, but the potential there is fantastic, and we need to follow through on that. He made something else that I thought, another comment that I thought was really important, and that is that when the city of Copenhagen offered shares in a wind turbine within the city limits, they were oversubscribed. Citizens said, yeah, I want a piece of that, so that they could say, hey, my apartment, you know, I'm supplying my own electricity because I own a piece of that wind turbine you can see on the horizon. Fantastic. That suggests there's a community model that we need to really follow through on. It's not just private sector wind developers that need to be involved in the revolution that's upon us, but it's the community scale and buying into that. Those of you who are fortunate enough to hear Mayor Bob Dixon from Greensburg, Kansas yesterday in one of the breakout sessions, he was inspiring. Greensburg was destroyed by a tornado a few years back. 95% of the city was wiped out. He said that the width of the tornado was, I think he said 2 kilometers. He might have said 2 miles. He's American.
2 miles.
In any event, it was, did you say 2 miles? Yeah, the width of the town is 2 miles, and they happen to coincide, and that's not good news if you're in the path of the tornado. But he offered a remarkable story of renewal of that town. And in doing so, he explained how they got there, and he said, you lead people to where you want them to go. You don't herd them where they'll scatter. Now, that's a very Kansas analogy. You don't herd them. But the point was really well taken. You lead people to where you want them to go. I think we're seeing that now, and we're seeing it in Vancouver. And I have to add, in response to a question he was asked about carbon taxes and would that help in getting broader acceptance of the kind of renewable energy input that he was seeing, he said, we don't go there. In Kansas, you don't talk about carbon taxes. But he implied that he didn't need to go there because civic pride and ownership in the renewable energy revolution that Greensburg undertook was enough. I wanted to say something about youth. You know, Esperanza Garcia, on Wednesday evening in the Pechacucha event, and those of you who were present there, you saw her bouncing across the stage. It was just like a firecracker that was unrestrained. She was remarkable. But she reminded us, I think, that there is a constituency out there that we really need to seize, and that constituency is youth. They have energy. They need to be encouraged. They need to be harnessed. They need to be entrained. And they're standing there. There was a touching story told yesterday in a breakout session organized by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. One of the participants there reminded us that the former mayor of Vancouver, Mike Harcourt, years ago, his kids came home from school one day, and they said to Mayor Harcourt, their dad, "Why doesn't Vancouver have a recycling program, Dad?" And Mike sat back and said, "Oh, why don't we?" And a year later, Vancouver had a recycling program. I'll close, I'll try and hurry up here, because there were so many neat quotations that were offered. In the transportation plenary that was on this stage here yesterday afternoon, the electric vehicle one, Gil Friend from Palo Alto, he turned the tables on us. He asked an important question. He said, we should be asking what cities should not do. Not what we should do, but what we should not do. And then he added that let's stop subsidizing single occupancy vehicles. Let's stop subsidizing internal combustion engines. An interesting twist, I think, in approach. Margery already mentioned that Sean Kidney's remark this morning, which, I mean, his enthusiasm on the stage was remarkable. Those of you who are in the room for the plenary, holy smoke, stand back. But he said, you know, as Margery reported, we have money in spades. We are awash in capital with respect to opportunities to invest in renewable energy. And he's forecasting a $100 billion market in green bonds this year internationally. That's extraordinary. Wow, good. It means we're here, as Margery said. But Ronan Dantec, of the senator from Nantes in France, reminded us of something really important, that one risk we face in how we present the opportunities to society is climate fatalism. Let's not go there. We don't need to go there anymore. And in fact, as a scientist, I know that that doesn't work. So we have to adopt climate optimism as our way forward. My final quote is 3 words. It comes from Jose Echeverria of York University this morning. Barcelona did it. So, to summarize, keywords that came out either reading between the lines or overtly from some of the speakers. Cost is always an issue, but we're getting there. We're getting there. It's not so much an issue anymore. Convenience. Put it together with cost. We must make things easy for people to adopt. We're not going to change human behavior or societal behavior until we make it easy for people to adopt a new way of doing things. We need to focus on the convenience side as much as on the cost side. It became very clear that we're crying out for good political leadership. We're seeing it at the city scale, no argument. It was on display here in the last 2 days. But we're not seeing it at the provincial or the national scale in most countries in the world. Maybe France is an exception. I have a lot of time for what France is organizing now leading up to COP21. But we really need to scale up. And John Kerry, I think, I'll close with a comment that John Kerry made a year ago, right after the IPCC Fifth Assessment Report on Mitigation was released. And I'll paraphrase slightly because I can't remember the exact quote, but he said that we are looking at a $6 trillion opportunity. He was reflecting on that economic value that is in front of us. But that's not the important part of his quotation. The important part was, he added, but we lack political willpower. Getting that political willpower in place, it's no longer an option. It's an obligation. And we're seeing it at the city scale. Our challenge for all of us now is to go back to our various communities and push to ramp that up to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. So now's the chance for getting the same kind of feedback, ideas from all of you who've been participants in this session, speakers and participants. And this is an open session, so we'll call on some people individually, but I'd like to just start by we come from lots of different constituencies and many different countries. I'd like to actually start by asking city elected officials. We've had a good representation of elected officials, councillors, mayors. So I invite, first of all, a comment from any of you who are elected officials about things that you've heard here that have had resonance for you in your city, in your municipality, and that you'll be taking back. Any comments from an elected official? David. Microphone here. And by the way, if you could, whoever you are, just before you speak, just give your name and your affiliation, please.
Thank you very much, Michael. And if I may do so on behalf of elected officials from outside Vancouver, first of all, thank you and all the organizers for what I found to be a tremendously stimulating event. And it was a treat to be able to get outside of City Hall and get reinvigorated. And yes, I haven't been shy to speak already at several sessions at this conference, but I have to add, he did ask me to speak. So I was primed
I asked
and ready.
him to be ready to speak.
Ready. I was primed. I was ready. I'm going to talk about 100%. I've had a bit of a dilemma about whether to aim for 100%. Is that too far? Does that scare people away? And I ended up going full circle. I arrived here feeling like I had to back away from that goal, that the way to get buy-in was to aim for something that didn't scare people. But I ended up, with all that I heard here, right back at the place where I started, which is actually, I'll credit Herman Scheer, who many of you will know of as one of the key players in the Givende, if I get that right. And when I interviewed him for my film Powerful about 6 years ago, I won't try and imitate the German accent, but he said, you have to aim for 100% because it takes away the excuse for bridging technologies. It takes away all the waste of time and money on the half steps that will take us partway there because we don't have time for bridging. We don't have time for half steps. And ultimately, we heard a few people at these sessions. We're talking now about 100% renewable as a global brand. I'm sure I'm quoting someone when I say that. Let's take it as that. We heard about style. We heard about communication at so many sessions and the importance of selling with the right language. How can you not like the idea of 100%? Less of something doesn't sell. More of something does. So I think that is something that we have to embrace. The points, again, about messaging, self-sufficiency, autonomy, civic pride. I even threw in a word that I remember from a good session at another conference a few years ago, attachment, local attachment. These are all things that are pretty universal. The idea of the civic pride and attachment is, if you make the exercise, if you make the transition to a renewable city something that becomes a source of civic pride and a source of attachment in the sense that people feel attached to their community, I want to be able to boast that I'm from Ottawa because I want Ottawa to be a place where people go, oh, that's that place that is at or well on its way to 100% renewable. That's the kind of thing that gets people excited. 20%, not so much. These were the kinds of things, the messages that I leave with. Aim big, speak to the heart, and get your messaging. And that will differ in all of our contexts, but I'm working on mine for Ottawa.
Great. Thanks very much, David. I'd like to hear from another civic official at the back. Woman at the back.
Hi, Valerie Warmington from the City of Nelson.
Right.
And I also wish to echo my colleague from Ottawa's sentiments about 100% goal. And also about the quality of this conference. It's been amazing and eye-opening. I think you did some excellent summaries up there, and so I'll just mention one thing one discussion that I took part in that I found very, very interesting, and it reminded me that climate change and responses to climate change are not standing on their own, that they can be wrapped up and incorporated in approaches we're taking with other issues. And yesterday I took part in a discussion about creating energy cooperatives in uncooperative environment that was held with Ashoka Findlay. And he talked about how issues of poverty can also be addressed at the same time that we're responding to the goal of achieving renewable energy. And I just wanted to bring that forward in summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And although we didn't have as much formal attention to that, the relationship between the equity objectives that all of us share and certainly cities share, as well as the greening objectives and the renewable energy objectives is, I think, a very deep one, and that's come out in some other sessions. Lady at the back of the room.
Adrian Carr, City Councillor here in Vancouver. Well, you know, one of the most amazing things that I heard, and you will not believe what this is the fellow who said that the climate scientists are all depressed. My husband and I've worked together on environmental issues for decades, and he gives me a climate change and crisis update every morning because he reads all the website information. I thought it was just him that was depressed, so I feel really good now. No, he's in a really great pool of people, and I was. Probably one of my proudest moments being on council was when we made the decision to go for Vancouver becoming a 100% renewable energy city. And at the time that I voted in favor of that, and you should know it was across the board, left, right, and center, left, right, and green actually is what we got, is that I thought, God, can we really do this? Like, it really was a question in my mind. I didn't have at all a hesitation about feeling like we had to do it for the sake of our children and combating climate change. I was right there on the kind of motivation from inside, but I didn't understand whether we could. And what this conference has given me is hope that we can. Well, not hope, just confidence that we can do it. Like, I love all the stories that I have learned about what people are doing in their different places, whether it's governments or whether it's at various levels or it's NGOs or it's institutions. So I've got a whole book of notes, and I really thank everyone for your contribution. I've got lots of cards, and I do plan on following up with those cards. But for me, it's truly hopeful, and it's daunting in terms of having to work with the federal and provincial governments. Those, I think, are the biggest barriers that we've got. We don't have, well, anyway, you know our situation. But I think we've got I know we have the political will, and I think we have a public in Vancouver that's right on board with this. So it's a very hopeful day, hopeful last 2 days for me. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm going to move on, but if there's another city official who'd like to make a contribution. Yes, sir.
Nils Jensen, I'm the mayor of Oak Bay, which is over in Victoria, about 18,000 people, but I'm also chair of the regional district. There's a couple of takeaways for me. I found this forum to be incredibly inspirational. And I heard Barcelona can do it. I heard Copenhagen can do it. And I heard Burlington, Vermont can do it. And so there's no reason why Greater Victoria can't do it. So I'm going to take that message back. The other message that I'm going to take back is that we know the capital is there. We know the technology is there. And what Sandu Johnson said in the very first day, and he said something along those lines and then added what we need is the process to be there. And that's particularly so in British Columbia, where we have the federal, provincial, regional district, and the local government levels kind of at times working in different directions. So what I'm going to take away from this is what we do need an appropriate process to get the capital working with the technology and delivering. So thank you very much for everything you've done up there and the organizers. It's been a great forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Two more at this table.
Well, hello everyone. My name's Trevor Birch, Mayor of the City of Woodstock, Ontario. And for me, it's the knowledge mobilization. So this list of names, and I've met quite a few of you, some I haven't, and Jose Echeverry went through some slides with some of the great things that are going on in Woodstock and Oxford County. And for me, coming here, I thought, you know, I'd be looking at ways to invest in more renewable energy. And what I'm going home with is how to invest in people and their stories so that we can mobilize the youth to teach the adults that this is what we need today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Bond, I'm a councillor in the North Vancouver district, and although I know many of you would love to keep hearing politicians talk on and on and on for the rest of the conference, I'm gonna keep it short to 3 points that I took away. If your current framework isn't working, make a new one. If you can't get through them, go around them. And it's not our renewable energy future, it's renewable energy now.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to ask, I know we've got a number of city staff from different size cities and municipalities, different countries. Would anybody who are city officials who are working on these sorts of problems like to tell us what you've heard, what you're taking away? I'm looking for, otherwise I'm going to put somebody on the spot, but anybody from a city staff? All right, very good, terrific, please.
I'm Deborah Sargent with the town of Smithers, and I must say this has been the most energizing conference I've been in for many, many years. It's so refreshing to actually talk about a future that is achievable now, and I think the message that I take from all of the discussions that I've had is, I think it's something that Gil Friend said from Palo Alto, we go first. That's the cities that are leading this whole renewable energy and the individuals that are in this room, and it's just, it's very empowering. I'm really delighted to be here.
Great, thank you. I know we have a couple of city staff who came to Vancouver for an earlier meeting of the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. Would any of you like to make a comment about things that you've heard that you're going to be taking back to your cities, which are all by the nature of that alliance, advanced cities that are already working on these problems? I'm going to look at Brian. I'm going to put you on the spot. You can't come from Denmark to a renewable energy conference without being asked, and you've already contributed before, but I'll ask you just to share a thought that you might have picked up.
Yeah, you're right. I had the chance just for one of the 2 days meeting of the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, and then 2 days here. The short version is I talked to Sada this morning about cities that set these goals, and you know, it's not to, there's a lot of people who come visiting us, there's probably a lot of people who come visiting Vancouver, and it's just like, I think he asked the direct question, where do we go to learn? And I suppose the answer is here. To come here to learn from each other. So to me, it's all bits and pieces of specific discussions. It's a lot about process. It's a lot about how to, those guys saying, if you can't go through them, go around them, how not to get stuck in what's difficult, but it's really difficult to pinpoint specific things, but a lot of process, a lot of new, coming from Europe, you get a new perspective on things when you're stuck in, we face the same problems, but we're stuck in very different systems. So that's probably what I would take back from this conference, and just to, we should, a lot of the cities here with this ambition, allow ourselves to find places where we can go and learn from each other.
Thank you. So I know we have, another, great, at the back, lady at the back.
Hi, my name is Ruth Stokes, and I've got a really large carbon footprint to be here. I'm from the South Island of New Zealand, although I've spent 20 years in Auckland, and for those of you who live in Vancouver, you probably know that Auckland wants to be Vancouver. But I would just like to say, apart from thank you for our city's invitation to attend this conference, but just to remind you that it doesn't matter whether you're in a town of 5,000 like Smithers, or you're in a city of 1.5 million, or you're in a city of 17.6 million, is that we all face the same challenges. We have to engage with our communities. We have to get them to take personal ownership. But most importantly, we have to take the leadership to get to where we want to go. If we're going to make a difference for our world and our children, it starts with the people in this room. And being part of this has been an incredible experience. And certainly meeting you and the people I have met, I certainly will be, taking back an enthusiasm for what renewable energy offers our community from an economic, financial, personal, community point of view. That it's not just about energy. Or it's not just about electricity, should I say. It's certainly about energy. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to my long flight home tonight.
Thank you in particular for responding to our invitation and it's a distance in terms of the flight, and I know the distance, but New Zealand is close to Vancouver and close to British Columbia, and thank you for making the trip and for participating with us, because it's been great to have a voice from your corner of the world. So I'll just take a few more categories of people because I want to bring out some other reactions. Some of you are in the energy business, either from utilities or energy providers. Would anybody from that line of work want to offer a comment? Because we had some good workshops from people who are right there on the front lines generating electricity or generating energy. Anyone from the utility business or the energy business? Okay, I'm going to just carry right on. Oh, good, terrific.
Hi, my name is Mark with Novo Solar Systems. I didn't say yes right away because I'm not a utility.
But
energy business.
You generate energy. Yeah.
I came here kind of, I almost backed out actually because we're really quite busy right now, and I decided, I better go to this, and I'm so happy that I did. I've been to other types of conferences, and they haven't been nearly as rewarding as this one. And the biggest thing I get from all of this is when you're working in business and you're having to kind of work from day to day. I'm not like Altera, we're just starting out. You feel as though you're a little bit alone and you're working against the grain. And what I got from this conference is that we're all in this together, and that there's a feeling of cooperation amongst not only policymakers, but the end users, that is the people of the communities. And also, I'm feeling as a business, I want to contribute somehow. I don't just want to, not at the expense of people, but to help forward, for lack of a better word, humanity. So it's really, really encouraging to see everyone sitting down like this and able to talk in just a conversation instead of I'm this person and this is what I do and you better listen to me. So it's been extremely rewarding. I'm a little bit speechless, which is not normal.
Thanks very much, Mark. I'd like to invite a number of you are from other private sector companies, green building, green technology, and other lines of business. So I'm interested in comments from people who come from the business sector. Terrific. Sure.
Thanks. I'm Paul Correa with the Clean Energy Association of BC. Our members are producers of clean and renewable energy in this province. I think what I'm taking away, and I've been reflecting upon this a lot, is we look upon ourselves as good. We're part of the good, if you will, and in a province that's going through a fair amount of debate on the fossil fuel versus renewables and other forms of energy, it's easy to put one's self into that category. And I think what I'm taking away is that all resource development, all of us, need to be assessed against the same standard. We all have impacts. We all have benefits, if you will, and it depends on how you view them. And for me, that's a good takeaway that I'm taking from this conference. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Another comment from the private sector at the back of the room.
Hi there, J.M. Toriel with Big Green Island Transportation. We install electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and I'm president of the company that I founded. It's been extremely enlightening to be in a conference where I don't have to yell and scream and jump up and down to get people to pay attention to the transportation side of renewables and that we're part of the solution. So thank you for I think we're finally getting to a point where people are realizing the full potential of the industry that we're in. and that we are definitely part of the solution, and there's so much that we can do together in combination on the transportation side as well as the energy production side. So we're all in the same mix, and that's the biggest takeaway that I got from this conference. And I thank everybody here that I was able to speak to, and look forward to speaking to those who haven't. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I know some of you are from communications businesses. Either you represent communications companies or web companies or journalists. I'm just looking for anybody from the communications business or who is a communicator. I'm great because, Zach, you can put down your camera in a second because we're going to cross to you, but this gentleman first.
Hi, my name is Peter Ladner. I'm here ostensibly on behalf of Business in Vancouver newspaper, but I also have communicated by writing a book about urban food, and I just want to say something that the biggest single thing that any one of us could do to lower our carbon footprint and perhaps have an impact on the energy that we consume is happening outside our cities, and that is to simply eat less meat. And we haven't talked about food at all here. And there's a whole range of energy issues that are coming from outside our flights, our concrete, all that kind of stuff that I think has to enter this conversation at some point, somehow. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Gentleman at the front here.
I wasn't actually sure when to get up because it kind of crossed all those. My name's Sean McGee. I work with Bullfrog Power. We're kind of an energy company, but I'm mostly a communicator and an educator. I think the most important thing that I took away was that we're not selling renewable energy. We're not selling technology. When we're communicating about these stories, we're telling stories of hope. When I think about what Brian was telling about Copenhagen, people don't ride bikes because it's the green thing to do. It's about living a good life. It's about making a better life. And it's just amazing that actually green transportation, renewable energy, energy efficiency, these things make life better. And those are the kinds of stories that I'm excited to be a part of, to be able to share with people, to give hope, and rather than this climate despair that we hear about so often. And there's no doubt that all the stories that we hear, for sure, are stories that are going to continue to resonate with other people. And I'm lucky enough that I get to travel all over Canada, and I'm for sure going to be sharing the stories that I've heard here, and just keep on raising the profile of hope. That's the core, I think, that's going to really take this wave, turn it into a tsunami, and just run around the world. And then we'll be that now rather than the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. I'll just take about 2 or so more comments. I know most of us in this room many of you have come from Canada, and the great majority of us are either from North America or from Europe. But I'm very grateful for those of you who've come from other continents, and we've already heard from a visitor from New Zealand. I wonder whether Barbara, who came all the way from Sao Paulo, would like to kind of give a comment about what you're going to be taking back. Barbara.
Hi. Well, I guess one of the biggest lessons that I'm taking from here is, and many of you have spoken about this today, is that we share many challenges, and we share many dreams, and we share missions. And that's really amazing to hear, because when you came from a development country like Brazil, we kind of have the idea that we have nothing in common with you, actually, and that we can only learn from you because you're so ahead of us in many aspects, and that we cannot work together. And I think one of the things that this conference brought me is that this is not true. We are actually together, and we are hiding together towards a mission and a future that we want to build. So I think, and as Sean has said quite well, it doesn't actually matter where we came from or what is our job focus when we go back to our city, because at the end we share the same mission and the same challenge, which is to empower and inspire people. Because the revolution we are seeking for won't happen through companies or through government. It's going to be guided by people and for people. So please, let's not forget it, and let's help each other. Thanks.
Thank you. If I could ask both of you to just step down from the stage. We're about to change, but I'm going to take one more comment because education and youth, as always, gets a lot of talked about, but you don't so often hear from people who come from that demographic. Barbara, you do. We have a few other people in the room who are under 30. I'm looking at you. One of them has a microphone in her hand, but over there someone else has raised her hand. So I'd like to take one or two comments from people of the generation that are going to see 2050 and are going to have to survive and take the world on to 2080.
Let's hope for that. I
Let's
hope I
hope for
will
that.
make it to 2050. So I'm 29. I'm, I guess, close to the older demographic then, soon. But part of this movement and part of this work that cities are doing to embrace that new renewable future. I would like to make a comment from a nonprofit representation perspective. There's more nonprofit organizations present in the crowd right now. From our perspective, it's extremely difficult to bring such a variety and diversity of cities into one place. So this is something that was happening the last 2 days, and it's amazing to see that. It's extremely helpful to share stories, so I totally agree with the comment that the mayor of Woodstock made. We have to share these stories among each other and also among the youth, including myself. We would like to thank the Renewable Cities team to make it possible for us as an organization to bring some of the municipalities here that we work with, including our delegates from South Africa. So a very big thank you for that, to make them part of the conference. And last but not least, our organization, which is called Sustainable Cities International. We have been around for 20 years, so we have quite some experience, not myself, but everyone who's working with us. And we see our role as nonprofits, and we're in line here with the Center for Dialogue and the Renewable Cities team. We take the role as mediators, as facilitators of this conversation. So if I would like to say something that I would like to take away from this conference, then it is our desire and aspiration to seek for more collaboration and help you from here when you go home and be your facilitator. So please reach out to us because we seek the collaboration.
Thank you very much. And I think we'll conclude. Oh, there I see one hand. All right, Esperanza. The final word from the floor is for you.
You have to forgive me as it's 6 a.m. wherever I'm from in the world. And I don't have the energy that I had the first time you met me. Yeah.
It's real.
Let's try to keep that up. So, how are we going to effectively change the world? How are we going to take what we've all learned here in the past 3 days to our hometowns and make a difference? And there's one big answer, and that's the youth. We are the ones responsible for undertaking the global challenge. Meeting the international youth in the work that I've done throughout however long I've lived. As youth, the future is ours. And the solutions are there, engaging us, for city councilors to have a youth representative in your team, for policymakers to ask and engage youth, to include their voices in policy. And you're right, there is Woodstock, Mayor. And the one person who's a big fan of Woodstock. Woo! You're right, there is a lot that adults can learn from youth, because youth are not the leaders of tomorrow. We have shown time and time again that youth are the leaders of today. And young people have been taking action. And there's 3 words, you know, Brazil can do it. There's another 3 words I like to share with you, and that's, I am one. I am one, but I have founded an organization, International Youth Council, that is supporting sustainable development globally and is in 30 countries all over the world, supporting young entrepreneurs. I am one, but I have engaged and educated 50,000 young people in my country. Shauna is one, but with a vision, she brought all of us together with 9 months of work and an incredible team and Ambassador Michael Small heading this. Everyone has an I am one, and we all walk out of this saying, we are one. We are one, and we will commit to building 100% renewable energy in our own countries, towns, cities, regions. Thank you.
Thank you. Great note to conclude on. So if the technicians could come up, and I'd now like to invite up for a conversation to help us to conclude 2 leaders who've come from this city, Deputy Mayor Andrea Reimer and David Cadman, who is until recently was the International President of ICLEI and a former Vancouver City Council member, and continues to play a role as the special advisor to the new President of ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. So I'm going to just ask Andrea if you would mind sitting there, and David there. Okay. And we're going to have a conversation between them, and I'll put a couple of questions, but for about 15 minutes, and then I'm going to invite Shauna to conclude the event. So, Andrea and David, and maybe Andrea, I'd like to start with you. You're the deputy mayor of this city that's hosted us for the last 2 days. Yes. That's already has quite a profile in Canada. I hope it's getting more of a profile internationally. But what are your reflections on sort of the road forward for Vancouver and for the kinds of issues around renewable energy in cities that we've been discussing here?
That's such a small question, right?
And you can shrink that if you like.
Well, the first thing I would say is, hi everyone. Gregor and I know Gregor was here yesterday.
Yep.
When Gregor is somewhere, I am somewhere else covering his stuff. So sounds like he really enjoyed the feedback that he got from all of you yesterday, and it was so great to hear your reflections just now on the conference. Let me start with the world, since that'll be the shorter part than fixing Vancouver. There could not be a more important year for action. I know we say this every year, and that's maybe a lesson for us, that when it really is this imperative. We've watched national governments fail again and again and again at the climate negotiations. And what they haven't sort of seemed to get is that the atmosphere actually hasn't been negotiating with us at all this whole time, right? So things keep happening, and we haven't been able to find that response. And our observation in Vancouver was that it really has become not a call to action, but a call to arms. The best case scenario is this 80 by 50 scenario for a deal. As long as that 20% is on the table, it will be a fight over who has access to that 20%. And it's just a completely deficit model at the time when we know what the answer is. We can't keep burning fossil fuels. That is the answer. So why not then fight for something where we can see possibility and hope and future, the kind of thing you were all just talking about, this concept of the race to 100% renewables. Very exciting for us as a city to see global debate and discussion around it. Of course, there's this little challenge that we have to do it. As the co-author of the motion, unlike the other councillor, it never once occurred to me that we couldn't do it. The question is really the timeline. And that timeline is greatly influenced by this, right? How fast can these connections happen? Somebody talked about the need to change the processes. Sadhu was quoting our Deputy City Manager, Sadhu. And it really is a race, because the atmosphere, again, could not care less how long it's going to take us to do this. It's going to keep doing what it's doing. But greatly inspired to hear people about the connections that you've made and the work that you're willing and already invested in and willing to amplify in your communities, because it will lift us all up to do that.
Thanks so much. Now, David, you've spent the last 9 years traveling a great deal to cities around the world as the representative of ICLEI. What are some of the thoughts you have coming forward from this event as you see the roadmap going forward for cities and renewable energy?
I think it's very positive. The sense is that the shift to 100% renewable is there. It's on the cusp of happening. So That is clear. The reality, however, is that most of what we're talking about is the OECD countries, the wealthy countries. As we move to a population of 10 billion globally, 9 billion of those people will be living in a billion in Latin America, 3 billion in Africa, 5 billion in Asia. So the question is, how do we take those partners along with us and inspire them to move to renewables? And we know that if there's going to be a deal in Paris, it's going to depend on financing for the Global South. If there is no financing for the Global South, then there's not going to be a deal. And that's the meeting that's going to occur in Addis Ababa in October. So that's going to be absolutely key. So I think it's great that we've got so many people now talking about moving to 100% renewables in the wealthy countries. Now the question is, how do we facilitate that and say to the developing countries, you don't have to follow our path. You don't have to go through fossil fuels and figure out how to get off of them. You need to figure out how to get directly onto renewables. And I think that's possible, but it's going to take our partnering with those cities, our helping those cities. And the problem is that only 3% of the cities in the world have a credit rating, have the ability to borrow money to do these kinds of investments. So it's how do we work and partner with cities of the Global South to make this transition? I think it's possible. I think we can inspire people that there is an alternative that we need to move on to. But it's going to take understanding that, as Andrea says, the atmosphere doesn't care where the CO2 pollution comes from. And so we've got to bring those partners with us and make sure that they move on this path to 100% renewables with us. And that's no easy thing. When you look at a city like Dar es Salaam, the city of Dar es Salaam doubles its population every 10 years. Well, I can't imagine living in a city that has to deal with those kinds of consequences. So we really need to become global citizens. We can do great things in our own city. We can do great things in our own country. We can do great things on our own continent. We can do great things in Europe and North America. But ultimately, we will represent 10% of the world population. And if we don't bring partners and figure out how to assist those partners in getting to a renewable energy path, because just like it's spreading like wildfire here, it will spread like wildfire there if they are introduced to it and see that they don't have to be dependent on fossil fuels. And so that is what I would beg all of the cities that are here, all of our organizations that are here, figure out who you can partner with in the Global South. Figure out how you can help them to finance their transition, because we're not going to make it as a planet if we don't all take this path together.
Andrea, when you, when you're thinking about moving the resolution and afterwards, no doubt you've encountered skepticism even in this community, which is probably more inspired by ecology and green thoughts than a lot of other cities. But how do you deal with the people who just shake their heads and say this is a pipe dream, 100% renewable energy?
Oh, well, two things I would say. I mean, one, and I say this as a mother of an 18-year-old, nobody on earth would have a child, although actually I said this to a group of people earlier, and then I realized maybe there are engineers in the room and they may actually do this. Most people, when choosing to have a child, do not map out 18 years of cost and financing and all the goals and the outcomes and objectives. It's a value system. It's a value. You want that to have a child. This is important to you, and you make reasonable efforts to figure these pieces out. Similarly, global planetary survival is a value for me. It's something that I value our species, and I'd like to see it continue into the future. So that's the first thing that you have to set. And then it's how do we create the connections that we need? How do we do the financing? How do we do the partnerships? And that is the role of elected officials, is to set that broader values framework. The other thing that we have going for us in Vancouver is the Greenest City Action Plan. So we made a commitment years ago now, to be the greenest city in the world by 2020. At the time, everyone said, that's crazy, why would you? Someone earlier said, oh, we have a very green group of residents here. Well, you wouldn't know it from my email inbox all the time. I'm certainly not 5 to 6 years ago. Again, we set a value statement. We fought for that value. We created a plan that's logical and evidence-based, but ultimately is about the expression of our values. And 5, 6 years later, it's getting results. We just hit 49.7% of our residents are walking, biking, or taking active transport. That puts us within 0.4% of our 10-year goal in 5 years. So not only are we meeting the targets, we're actually very well on track to exceed them. And the message we send is set the value, let's share this goal together and figure out what your part is in. It's not a question of whether we are or aren't getting there, it's a question of what your role is going to be in us meeting this achievement.
That's great. Now, one comment I'll quickly make, and I'll cross to you, David, for a reaction. What I heard from a lot of the workshops that I attended, which I had not appreciated really until I participated in this conference, was how powerful the idea of community ownership and community autonomy is, and that sense of having a stake in your own energy future as a driver for investment in renewables. Because caring about the future of the planet and the atmosphere motivates. Some people should motivate a lot more, but that local ownership piece often is the thing that turns the key. What have you found in terms of talking to mayors and city officials, especially in the developing world, because you put that accent on? What are the motivators for them? Is that sense of having more local ownership, does that also have resonance in the developing world or in some of the other regions that you visited?
You know, I think absolutely it does, and some places there are impediments to that by the existing energy structure. And so how do you try and change the existing centralized energy structure that says we will supply, you will plug in? How do you change that to change that picture? And I think cities can be part of that change. They can create their own energy companies. They can create their own systems for district heating and cooling. They can create their own systems for creating electric energy. And I think that's the wave of the future. I mentioned in a couple of workshops the Hermes Award, which awarded to a German company that created a switcher that will allow, they say, 50% of the energy consumption to be done between people who generate the energy themselves off their roof and sell to their neighbors. That is the future that's going to be the Amazon of energy of our future. And that is coming, and that's replicable not just in the West, but it's replicable also in the developing world. The idea that 50% of the people in India are not even on the grid, the reality is they don't have to go on the grid. I met with Mr. Modi and I said to him, you know, he said, well, we'll have to increase our energy production by five times. And I said, are you putting in phone lines? He said, well, no, we've got cell phones. Why would we do that? And I said, well, think about energy in the same way. Why would you have a centralized energy system when you can have a decentralized energy system that will meet local needs in situ without having to draw upon long lines that dissipate the energy in its delivery? So I think giving communities the ability to generate and own and maintain their own energy is going to be a key way of the global South plugging into this, for sure.
Great. Andrea, I'll give the final word to you. Any additional thoughts on, you know, what are the role for Vancouver and for Vancouver both in our own space and then internationally going forward, just in the next 12 months? You know, where do you see the effort's going to be placed?
Well, we have a small plan to write about how we're going to get to be 100% renewable, and that'll come in the fall. I guess it was interesting hearing people talk about hope and realizing, you know, we spent a ton of time as a society in Vancouver, Canada, the world, talking about if climate change was happening, right? And apparently some people somewhere are still having that discussion. Then we started to talk about what's the solution to climate change, and had a lot of arguments about that, carbon tax, this price, whatever it is, right? The question now before us, I really believe those questions are in the whole, the center of gravity. Those questions are done. We are down to the who and the when. Vancouver clearly has made a choice to be a WHO, but we made that choice wanting it not to be just about Vancouver. It is about how much we can inspire. This conference really does mean the world to us, not just that we've gotten the benefit of all of your learning to help us with this large plan we have to write, but hearing today that you're going to leave here and be energized and excited and telling the stories that need to be told and spreading the hope and the energy that needs to be spread. That, for us, is the future. And the last piece that I wanted to touch on, David and I were in Seoul together at the ICLEI Congress, where we did launch the 100% Renewable Cities Network and would invite your city to join if you'd like to join that network and be part of a formal network looking at how fast we can advance this. But I was amazed at, international gatherings are very good at finding disagreement. So there was, for some people it's energy safety, for some it's energy security, for others it's energy poverty, for some of us it's about climate. Renewables was the answer to everything. It was like this magic, like the holy grail showed up, and that never happens. And it made me think, this is this moment that we really can find a way to knit all these pieces together and create sort of the anti-climate, the anti-greenhouse gas blanket that we need, that this unifying message that we can use, not just to power our world sustainably, but really to power us out of poverty and to create economies all across the world that will, it's not just about beating climate change anymore, it's about beating a whole whack of social, economic, and environmental deficiencies that many people have been fighting on for many decades in this one moment.
Great.
I would just add to that, in China, when you talk about reducing by 80%, they go, well, what portion of the 20% that remains is ours? Mm-hmm. When you talk about 100% renewables, they go, yep,
we're going to win that.
Yeah. We're going to win that. Yeah. We'll take that on.
Yeah. Great. Well, look, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you both for your leadership in this city and internationally, which you've both done. And thanks for giving us some thoughts as we leave. So we'll conclude this dialogue. Round of applause. And
now, how lucky am I to have not just a mayor, but a deputy mayor and some of the councillors that you've met. It's a great city to be in. Thank you so much. Now, my job is to close this, and I want to start by, first of all, thanking each and every one of you. Was there anyone in this room that didn't say something at some point through some session? Were you quiet? Was there anyone? Our hope with this was to create a space for learning, for exchange, for dialogue, and I hope that we were able to do that. So my first thank you is really to you. We know what it is to give up time to come to these kinds of things. We know every single one of you has so much on your plate, and we want to thank you for not just showing up, but for contributing your knowledge and your expertise to these days. So I want to thank you. I want to say a big thank you to our partners. I think I said on Wednesday night when we started is that we got on the phone with 150 different groups and we invited them in to partner. Claire is pointing out 200. So by the time I had moved into my new position, we got to another 50. So over 200. And what was I think our greatest achievement before we ever got here is that so many came in a partnership. I just want to say who some of these are. Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Clean Energy Canada, ICLEI, and that was a long negotiation. The World Future Council, one of the leaders in this space. The 100% Renewables Global Campaign, the Solutions Project. I'm not going to get this right. Umweltbund, help me out, Germans. Clean Technica, Climate Action, Bloomberg BNA. Also, the C40 as a way of, although they don't partner normally in this way, the way they showed their support was holding a parallel meeting, and the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, and then, of course, PICS and the City of Vancouver and all of the sponsors that you saw. So I want to say a very, very big thank you. This is your gathering as well. Now, There were, I think I counted 72, I might be wrong, different resource people and speakers. So I would like to acknowledge all of you. And I really want to acknowledge the people that had to do the Pechakucha in 6 minutes. Those were not easy to do. So I want to thank each of you for all of the work that you put into coming, to preparing, to presenting. And for the folks from the Land Art Generator, they drove 6 days to get here so that they could share with you their presentation. So that, and I think that they've got 6 more days to go to get back to Pittsburgh. So that is commitment. So a big thank you. We had a team of volunteers who were incredible. I don't know that many of you met them. They've been taking notes through all of this. They have been not hurting, gently sending us in different directions on where we needed to be. They've been helping with greeting. They've been helping with registration. And I would like us all to put our hands together for those volunteers. They have been incredible. Yes, yes, thank you. They deserve it. I see them sitting down. They're sitting there. Okay. Now, I want to say thank you for the thanks that I've received, but really, it's not me. And I'm going to ask some people to stand up because they do deserve incredible recognition. Claire Havens, Kian Grindig, Betsy, Catherine, Angela, Molly, Christine, Michael. Am I missing anyone? This is your Carbon Talks Renewable Cities team. They deserve the credit for all of this. And so much work went into thinking through each little phase so that you would feel like there was a chance to engage. You would feel that there was a sense of belonging. So a big thank you. And to all of our colleagues at the Center for Dialogue who it was really funny last week. We're kind of a big team, and at one point everybody said, all hands on deck. And it didn't matter what else was going on, all of the team came forward. So a big thank you. So, now, on Wednesday night, I suggested that you were the architects of a movement, that really this was the gathering of a movement, the movement towards 100% renewable energy. And what it feels like, and certainly from the conversations I've had, is that this is really alive and well. Like, this is really, we're naming a moment here. And I feel like there's a tipping point that's happened that's pretty profound. When we started to think about this, we didn't see a lot of venues where we were talking about 100% renewable, and we were talking about it in relationship to cities particularly. But what's happened here is I do feel like there's a real movement. And when Deputy Mayor Andrea Reimer in Korea said we're going to create a renewable cities network, that made it very much a global movement. So our job now is really to capitalize on what we've learned, who we are, the kind of community we've built here, and to really ensure that we're moving the dial on this, that this isn't just talk, it's not words, that we really get down, as Nancy said, start to talk to the people that actually have to make this work. Nancy in the Paris to Pathway, or Pathways to Paris sense. Our job now is to really land this, so that it's not just a series of aspirational goals, but it is really practical actions. So renewable cities, the commitment we're making to you is to ensure that all of this, as Michael has said, is back in your hands. You're going to see what happened here. Our next commitment is to work with the City of Vancouver over the summer and land that strategy. So we'll be working with the City of Vancouver. And then we will also be getting ready for Paris. Paris is going to be the next time you see a kind of convening function where we're actually there. And there's going to be 2 things that we're looking at in Paris. One is going to be that whole movement of renewable cities having a voice and creating more momentum, because it is a gathering like there is no other gathering, certainly of local governments as well as national. So we will be bringing that message. But we are also going to look really practically at maybe 3 or 4 key cities and the questions that they have, and moving really to action. So that's the commitment we've made. We've also got other conversations going with economic commissions and a gathering there. So that's where we're at. I'm going to ask every one of you who have a Twitter account to add to us at Renewable Cities. That will allow you to keep in contact in some of the day-to-day stuff if you're interested, but we're quite active on Twitter, and we do let you know what's going on. I want to end by saying a very, very big thank you to all of you, and to thank you and wish for you that you're able to take and galvanize on the energy here. Good luck, be well, safe trip home, and for those of you that are going on the site visits, you're in for something great. Thanks so much.